Hello and welcome back to I don't even know what to call this podcast anymore, okay? Growing through it is no longer, okay? Because I didn't do a basic Google search to see that there was another very successful podcast that had the name Growing Through It, alright? Dumb me. We're gonna move on, okay? So, by the time this is released, I will have a name, but I don't know yet, okay? I'm going between Tired Truths, the Half Charge podcast, and Barely Blooming. So if you have an opinion, well, if you do, I'm already gonna have it like settled by then, but even then, like if you have an opinion, comment down below what you think my name should be because I don't know, okay? It's actually really hard because every single person has a podcast, and so if you like find a cute name, you like look it up and you're like, "Oh, there's 15 podcasts with this name," you know? So, I'm struggling. I don't really care that much, but at the same time I'm struggling, okay? So, today we're going to chat about dating and friendships when you are chronically ill because man, is it rough out there, okay? When you thought being chronically ill was hard enough, what do you mean you have to deal with people? Like, are we kidding? So, I've really kind of like touched on this before, but when you become chronically ill, your idea of friendship, the concept of friendship, the amount of friends you have, your relationship with your friends drastically changes, okay? Um, I got diagnosed when I was in high school, my senior year, so I, was growing up thinking all of these milestones that you usually think of, like going to prom and all of these things. Like, I was so sick that I didn't go to my prom. I also didn't really want to go to prom, but I was like, that sounds absolutely horrible with the chronic illness, so like, I didn't go to prom. I didn't have a high school graduation party because I didn't have a big enough friend group that it was like really necessary to have a high school party because I'd lost so many of my friends. Stuff like that, that it's like that can be really hard to deal with, and especially when I think you are younger, that is even harder. I think when you're chronically ill, you actually need so much more support than like healthy people, but it's actually so incredibly lonely and isolating that that support isn't really there. I think one of my like first kind of like instances of kind of like losing a friendship was I was in high school again and I had this decently close friend, and once I got sick, I really struggled to leave my bed at that point. I didn't know what was wrong with me. I didn't have any treatment. So I was like really going through it. I was really struggling. And so even the idea of like hanging out with a friend was like so unbelievably exhausting that I had no interest or capability to be able to do that. And she unfortunately really took that personally, and she felt that me like not hanging out with her was like me being selfish, and she was always upset that I wasn't spending enough time with her, and all these things like that. And I think when you're just like in these conflicting relationships, when the person just really isn't understanding what you're going through and isn't empathetic of the hard times, that it's just become so exhausting that like you don't really want to be friends with them anymore. And I hope she's doing well, and that's not the only person in my life that I've lost, but I think you're going through so much emotionally that the last thing you want to do is like tack on an emotionally taxing relationship. Another problematic thing when you're trying to deal with friendships and stuff is people make plans, and I'm a big planner. I love to plan, but when you have a chronic illness, planning really doesn't go well because you don't know what you're going to wake up feeling like every morning. There's so many mornings like I have plans and I wake up and I'm like, there's no way I could do that today. Or if I do that today, I'm not going to be able to get out of bed for the next 3 days. So I think you cancel plans a lot. You have to change plans a lot. And I think for people, they don't like that. And I think that's totally understandable to a point. But at the same time, I think you have to find people who actually understand that like you're not canceling because you don't want to be there. You're canceling because you can't physically be there. And again, I think a lot of people just don't want to deal with that. Like people don't want to deal with people who are chronically ill. They want things to be easy and simple and fun, and when you're not able to be fun all the time, like they don't want to deal with that. So I think I'm very grateful for the few people that I have found who, are empathetic towards what I'm going through. And if I need to cancel plans, that they're okay with that. If I need to change the plans and we lay in my bed and watch a movie in silence, like they're okay with that, you know. And I think that that's so important to be able to find. But in the same sense, I think it's really difficult to find those people. And even when you do, like, they will never fully understand what you're going through. An able bodied person, you know, again, can try and like empathize. I think I've said empathize like 8 million times. But, you know, they can have like some sympathy of like what you're going through. But because they can't personally like be in your body and see like the internal aspect and the outward like physical stuff that goes into like having relationships, like they will never understand that. You know, I think that's sometimes hard because, you know, and like you want to tell people your experiences and what you're going through, and a lot of times like they just simply don't understand that, and you can't, and like you explaining it isn't really gonna help ish, you know. I think kind of like an example of this, you know, I'm always complaining to my mother about things, and I'll say something that had bugged me that someone said, or, you know, I visited a doctor and I didn't like the way they acted because of this, you know, things like that. And she says things like, well, they were trying to be nice, or they just don't understand, and, you know, they were just trying to have like a positive outlook, something like that, you know. And it's like, yes, I understand that, but at the same time I can still be frustrated about it. Like, I can still be freaking frustrated that they were trying to put like a positive spin on my horrible life that I'm going through right now. Like, I think a lot of people think that you need to be happy and like pushing through it and like positive all the time. And it's like, you don't, okay? Living with a chronic illness sucks ass, okay? And you can say it does. And that doesn't mean that you're going to give up, but it means you can be upset about it, you know? And I think a lot of able bodied people don't understand that. Like, they want you to be positive, they want you to be uplifting. And sometimes you just want to vent, you know? Sometimes you just want to say, God, I'm going through this right now and it's hard and it sucks. And you want them to say, yeah, it sucks, I'm sorry, you know? And I think especially like with men, like men are such like fixers that I think you can kind of like complain to like women a lot more. And maybe this is like a really overall general stereotype that I really shouldn't say, but like, you know, I feel like a lot of men are like fixers. And so when you're like, ugh, I'm going through this, they're like, no, you can do it. And I'm like, no, I actually can't. Okay. I can't. Anyways, you know, I said that I'm so grateful for those people that I have found that have stuck by me and who are willing to put up with like all of my crap, you know, which I'm like really grateful for. I think it's really hard to not feel like you're a burden in someone's life. You know, I think I struggle with that. Um, you know, thinking like, you know, I'd be such a better friend if I wasn't sick. I'd be such a better girlfriend if I wasn't sick. You know, I'd be such a better daughter. Like all these situations in your life when you're like, God, if I just wasn't sick, like I wouldn't be such of a problem, you know. Um, but as much as I think that, I also have to recognize like that's not true, you know. My disability doesn't make me a burden. My conditions, my issues don't make me a problem. Like, they're just a part of who I am. And, you know, this has built me into this really strong woman who has different values than she did before she was sick. And everybody goes through things, and it's just a part of me, you know. But as much as I say that, like, it's also hard to believe, you know. Like, I'm saying, like, oh, you're not a burden, but at the same time, like, it's really hard to, like, really truly believe that you're not. So I think that's, like, something that I definitely need to, like, continue to work on. And know that, like, there's other qualities about me besides my chronic illness that make me a great person, you know? Ew, that's like such a pick me thing to say. Anyways. But at the same time, like, even though I say like there's so many other things that make me great, like, being chronically ill and being sick is such like an identity to me. Like, it's such a huge part of my life that I don't want to dismiss. You know, I think it can be really easy to feel shame around me being chronically ill, but again, it has made me into the person that I am today, and I view the world so vastly different than I did when I was healthy, that it's a part of my life that I can't ignore and can't avoid and don't want to, because has built me into such like a strong person that like you shouldn't feel ashamed about your conditions, you know. You should be proud of where you're at in life and how you're continuing to push through every freaking day, you know. So, you know, that's definitely something that I need to like work on, like being proud and accepting myself for like where I'm at right now, you know, cuz it's sure as hell not where I thought I'd be. You know, I think kind of along the same lines, I don't tell most people that I'm chronically ill. Um, I am very privileged that I don't currently use any type of like mobility aid. So pretty much all of my symptoms are invisible. I mean, if you know me well, you know that I'm ill because, I mean, like, I feel like the longer you know me, like, those symptoms kind of like aren't invisible anymore. You know, me bringing a chair with me wherever I go isn't really normal. Like, not many 22-year-old people keep a collapsible chair in the back of their car, but things like that, that like, the more you know me, like, the more you know that stuff isn't right. But anyways, I feel like, you know, the when I meet people at my job, at my school, I don't tell people that I'm ill. And I'm not really sure why, you know, and I think some people in my family think that it's like, why don't you tell people? But at the same time, it's like, it's such a big traumatic story that, like, I don't want to have to continue to say over and over and over again. But I also know that once you do tell people that you're chronically ill, their perspective of you definitely changes. Um, and that's not always necessarily like a bad thing, but I do know a lot of people, like, once you tell them, like, you get the pity look, you know, you get the I'm so sorry for you, or they get really uncomfortable, they don't really know how to talk about it, or you get the questions of like, are you sure, like, you look fine, you know. So I think I'm not alone in this, where it's just like a lot easier to just not address it at all. And for people that I don't see on like a daily basis, I don't feel like it's necessary for them to know. You know, you don't need to know every single part about my life. And even more, like me telling you, you know, like you're not going to do anything about it. You can't help me with this at all, you know? So it's like, I don't really feel the need. And at the same time, like, I know this is like a negative thing and it shouldn't be something that like I hold with me, but a lot of the times I know that people have a negative view over people who are sick, you know? And so it's really hard for me to like disclose that to people all the time. You know, I think I have this perception of me that's like, I'm a strong, independent person. I don't need help. But in reality, I actually need a ton of help because I'm so sick, you know? But if I tell you that I'm ill, then you're going to know that I need help, you know? And then you're going to think that I'm weak, you know? So, and I understand that's like a bad view and not how I should be like looking at things. But again, I think I need to say this because I don't think I'm alone in that idea. And then, like, even more, like, when you do tell people, like, they still don't understand. Um, Especially because, like, conditions are complex. Like, imagine me trying to, like, go up to somebody that I just met and was like, hey, I have POTS, EDS, MCAS, and MOUS. Let me explain what all of these are to you in 2 minutes. Like, you're not going to understand. And it's just like so overwhelming for like an able-bodied person to be like, oh my god, I don't know what to do now, you know, that I'm just like at a point in my life where I'm like, I just don't tell you, I just don't say anything. But then at the same time, then it's like a weird shift of like, well, then I'm like, am I hiding something from you? But it's also like, I'm not, like, I don't know, like, I've had people, like, so I coach volleyball, okay, and coaching volleyball is really hard when you're chronically ill, especially because it takes so much energy, and you know, you have to stand, you have to yell, you have to like do all of these things that aren't really conducive with a chronic illness. You know, I do a lot of like weird things that normal coaches won't do. You know, I will literally sit in the middle of the floor at practice. I am not as loud as other coaches. You know, I do a lot of pointing and like gesturing because I know that screaming is first off going to make me have a headache or pass out and things like that, that I have to modify a lot that I'm doing. You know, I can't play as much with the girls as normal people do. But I still don't like disclose that to a lot of people. I think only a few people at the club know that I'm chronically ill. And I was coaching with somebody last year, and we had gotten like relatively close, and she was asking me what I was doing over the summer, and I had to tell her that I was getting surgery, and she was like, whoa, what do you mean? So then I had to tell her I was sick, and she was kind of like butthurt, like, why didn't you tell me this earlier? She's like, I thought like we were so close, like, why didn't you tell me this earlier, type situation. So it's like this weird balance where it's like, when do you tell people, when do you not tell people? Like, it's just like complicated. So like, I think you know what I'm saying. It's just complicated and frustrating and annoying, okay? Do you live with a chronic illness and want to connect with people who truly get it? Check out Chronically Connected, an app created just for people with chronic conditions. Think of it as a giant group chat where everyone understands what you're going through. We have weekly prompts to spark real conversations. It's a safe space to ask questions and share experiences, and build connections with people who truly get life with a chronic illness. It's simple. Click the link in the description to join. Just make sure you upload a profile picture so we know you're real. Let's grow through this together. Check out Chronically Connected today. And I think this idea gets increasingly more difficult when it comes to dating. So, I'm 22, and I'm at a time in my life where I'm like, where is my husband? Okay, and maybe that's too crazy to say, alright? But I'm over it. I am over it, okay? I don't care about, like, the too young. And, like, I don't need to marry my husband tomorrow. It can be a couple years. But I'd like to know who it is, Anyways. So, I have resorted to dating apps, unfortunately, okay? But the reason I have done this is because I don't leave my house, okay? And if I do, I'm going to work, or I'm going to school, or I'm going to the gym, okay? That's it. And I will occasionally go out with friends, okay? Let me remind you that I am very violently chronically ill, okay? So I'm not going out on the town every night, all right? I'm not going dancing. I'm not going to any crazy clubs, I'm hardly going out to dinner, all right? And we just talked about how you lose so many friends when you're chronically ill. So, I'm just going to say there's not a lot of people to go out with, okay? I don't have like a massive group of friends where it's like, oh, let's all go to the bars tonight, and like maybe I'll find my husband, But also, who's finding their husband at a bar, I don't think hardly anyone. My program that I'm in right now, there's 4 people, and all 4 of us are girls, okay? Where I coach volleyball, I know everyone. They're mostly old men, okay? There are no prospects in my community, okay? When I'm at the gym, I'm fighting for my life, okay? I'm not looking at a man. I'm trying not to pass the F out, So, my vicinity of men is really limited, okay? I also have the world's worst resting bitch face. My mom always says that no one's ever going to approach me. How kind of her. And I understand that, okay? So I've resorted to dating apps, all right? And I've been doing this for way too long, okay? I've had some relative successes that last a minute, and then you're like, okay, you're goodbye, So, I've had to deal with this a few times, and meeting men on dating apps and being chronically ill just doesn't really go together. I think meeting people in general, I think anything with being chronically ill, just doesn't go together, But that's besides the point, okay? So when I'm scrolling on a dating app, I'm looking for a couple things. First off, are you unbelievably hideous? And if you're on Hinge, you're probably going to be, Hate to say it, but I really feel like that's what Hinge does. I feel like they give you the ugly men. Oh my god, I shouldn't say this. No one's ugly, okay? Just not something that I want, okay? The, ugly men. And then I feel like if you pay for it, then they give you the people that you want, but if you don't pay for it, they give you the, that's besides the point, okay? The first thing I really struggled with is what to put on a dating app, okay? Obviously, I got cutesy pictures of me, okay? I've got Instagrams full of pictures of me not looking disabled, okay? But then it gets to the prompts, It's like, where do you like to travel? Nowhere. I don't want to leave my bed, Dating me is like literally boring as hell because I don't leave my house and I'm chronically ill, my simple pleasures, like getting through the day without being in pain. You know where I'm going with this? It's like, what do I say? Like everything is like so surface level, like I just never know what to say. And then once you've created the profile and it's published and you're scrolling, then you're seeing all of the prompts of the men. And like, so it's like, I'm not gonna give a percentage, but it's like so high. The amount of men that are like, I just want a gym girl. Like, where's my gym girl at? I'm like, that's not me, okay? I may go to the gym, but it's for like 20 minutes tops, okay? And I'm riding the damn recumbent bike and my heart rate's at 80 because it can't go any higher. There's no exercise building. You're not going to get the cute gym couple that you want, okay? And first off, those people are cringy. So it's like, God, where's my gym girl? Not going to get it, okay? Sometimes people are like, where do you want to travel with me? Nowhere, okay? You're not the one for me. Goodbye. Swiping left, And then we get when I'm scrolling at pictures, and it's like outdoor picture, outdoor picture, outdoor picture, picture with a fish. Goodbye. Not for me, I'm literally like, if you have more than one outdoor picture, we are not compatible, okay? I need to be inside. I need my heating pad. I need my heated blanket. I need ice cold drinks, I need a toilet. Like, this isn't gonna match. Where's my curler and my warm bed, And then you get the people that are like, what do I order for the table? And they're like, 8 shots of tequila. And you're like, okay, nope, not gonna match. We're not gonna mesh, Same with like the people that like, I want a passenger princess I can go out with. It's like, okay, that's also not me. Like, we're not gonna be out on the town at 3 a.m, okay? We're gonna be in bed watching High School Musical, okay? It's just like, the options are limited. And I know that that's my fault, okay? I know that I'm incredibly picky and that there's a lot to handle here, okay? But I also think that hopefully I have a few good qualities, maybe. And then the other things you run into, which is so incredibly annoying, are like the same prompts for every man. Like they really like searched up ChatGPT and they were like, let me look up the most basic prompt ever and that's what I'm going to say. Like the getting your hoodie back after you borrowed it. First off, if you're not giving me your hoodie, I don't want you near me, okay? What if I'm cold? Okay? What if I spill something on my shirt? What if I'm cold and I have my own hoodie but I want two? Like I'm going to give it back, but what is your like... But why are you so obsessed with, like, keeping your own clothes? What do you think I'm going to do with it? What are you hiding, Where's the other 15 girls you've given your hitties to, And then you get the Helen Keller wasn't real. It's like, oh my God, can you be more creative? You are so original. Or it's the pigeons were spies. It's like, oh my God, do you not have an original thought in your head? Anyways, my final irk about dating apps. Is irk the wrong word? That doesn't feel right. I don't know. My final issue is the men that say they're like 30 years old and they're like still trying to figure it out. And you're like, what? You are like growing gray hairs. You're starting to decay. What do you mean you're still trying to figure it out? Or even worse, they have like long-term relationship and then it's like relationship type and it's like still trying to figure it out. It's like, how do you not know? How do you not know? Like, why are you on here if you don't know? I thought this was a dating app. That's the other thing. It's like, or you'll like be talking to a man and then they're like, I think I just like I'm not ready for a relationship. It's like, okay, then why were you on a dating app? It's called a dating app, okay? Anyways, I just feel like there's like so many icks on dating apps that it's like unbelievable. And half the time, you don't know who the man is. You're scrolling through their photos and it's like 5 different frat guy photos with like 50 men in it. And you're like, who are you? Which one are you? It's like, do you really have success with this? I don't get it. I don't get it. Okay, so there was literally a point in my life, and I say a point, but it's actually been several points that I've done this, and this is something I'm not proud of, okay, where I've been on Hinge, Bumble, and Tinder all at the same time. They just give off 3 different effects, and I feel like there's 3 different types of men that are on these accounts, and sometimes when you're really down bad, and again, you're chronically ill and you're laying in your bed, you just swipe for hours. Hours is a little pushing it, but, you're just like, no, I hate you, It's just like, ugh. Anyways, but I've had, even though I say dating apps are trash and I feel like they're getting worse, there have been instances in my life where I've found, well, I guess I haven't found because they're no longer here, but, I've thought that I found a connection with someone, so I can't say that it doesn't work, okay? But then once you get to that point of when you've like started to like hang out, also, it really pisses me off that it's like, okay, I feel like if we're going out, like we're dating, but like that's not what's happening anymore in this world. It's like if you are hanging out and going on dates, like you're not dating yet. Like you're still in like the situationship zone. But then like you might become exclusive, but then you're still not dating. Like you aren't like boyfriend and girlfriend, like you're just like exclusively together, which is like, are we bonkers? And then if by like God's willing will you finally get to the boyfriend girlfriend part, then it's like holy moly, it's been like 15 years. And you're still asking for your sweatshirt back. Whatever. Anyways, once you're like with like these men, I feel like when you're chronically ill, and I say men, but it could literally be anyone. I'm just saying men because this is like my circumstances. I never know when to disclose that I am chronically ill, okay? And I fear it becomes a problem, especially because, I can't do a lot of things. I think in the summer, so many men want to go for a hike. First off, I didn't like hiking when I was healthy. But I sure as hell am not going for a hike being chronically ill, okay? And it's really kind of hard to be like, no, I won't do that. But I like to say that I don't like the outdoors, okay? I'm an inside gal, okay? And if that's a turn off for you, we're not compatible, okay? Goodbye. Things like that. Like men will be like, let's go skiing together. Let's go, I don't know, like just so many things where it's like, I have to think through, like, will I be able to stand that long? Like, what kind of food is going to be there? How do I take my medication? What do I put in my purse that's going to, like, get me through this? Like, what happens if this, like, what happens if I start to crash? Like, things like that it's like, normal people don't have to think about. Ugh. But it's like, I feel like that is like where it's like really hard to disclose about being chronically ill. And at the same time, as I said this before, like being disabled is like such a big part of my life that it's like, if you are going to be like in my future, like that's not something that I want to hide from you. But it's like, it's weird to be like, hi, my name is Ellie and I'm chronically ill, because I feel like that's also like a gigantic turnoff, So. And I feel like it's even harder because, like, when I'm trying to explain my past, like, so much of, like, my life is due to chronic illness, So when people ask me, like, oh my God, where'd you go to college? I can't simply say, like, oh, I went to this school to play volleyball, because it's like, well, I went there and then I had to transfer. And then people are like, oh, why'd you transfer schools? And it's like, well, because I was, like, so utterly ill that I was, like, so malnourished and I was, like, going to lose my mind. So even stuff like that. Or it's like, oh, what'd you do last summer? It's like, I don't want to be like, I had surgery and I laid in my parents' bed for 6 weeks. Like, I don't want to say that, But at the same time, I don't want to keep that from you. So it's just like, it's like this hard balance of like when to tell people and when not to tell people. And I also feel like like when you don't tell someone, like you kind of like make it a big deal. And like, I don't really think it's like this huge deal, but also it is. But like, when you're like, I have to tell you something, like, there's like not a good way to like go about this, like if you are like, I need to tell you something, they're like, oh no, I'm scared. But then if you're like so like nonchalant about it, you're just like, you just like can't be. Like there's not an easy way to like casually bring it up that you are like violently ill, And especially like me, like I do infusions every single Sunday. And so it's like, you want to have like a little Sunday date? Sorry, I'm busy, How about Monday? Well, I'm recovering from the infusion, So it's just like things like that it's just like hard to navigate and really tricky. At the same time, like it shouldn't matter. And I've met men who, I've told and they're accepting of it. But I also feel like they just don't understand it. They don't freaking get it. And that's okay. That's okay that they don't get it. But it's also hard because that they don't get it. I think I get this a lot. Like, you'll be complaining about something or saying something that is difficult. Maybe now that I'm talking out loud, maybe so my solution is to just stop complaining. Like, just stop telling people stuff and the problem will go away. But, anyways, like, I'll be complaining about, like, I don't know how I'm gonna, like, handle these things, blah, blah, blah. And, like, they'll be like, oh, you can do it. Like, you can do it. It's gonna be hard, but you can do it. It's like, well, no. Like, I'm trying to figure out if I actually can do it. Like, if I'm, like, physically capable of actually doing it. I know mentally, like, I could do multiple things, but I'm trying to see if physically my body will literally let me do this, you know? And I feel like that's a hard concept for a pea little brain man to understand, okay? Can you see I don't have a great relationship, great track record with men? You know, and I shouldn't put this on the internet because as soon as I do, either things are going to go to shit or he's going to see this. But either way, I don't really care. I'm currently seeing a man who I am impressed with, okay? And that doesn't happen very often. Well, actually, it does. I meet a man and I'm like, you will be my husband. And then I see them for 2 more days and I'm like, actually, I hate you. So I fear I'm the problem. But this man really doesn't have a flaw so far, okay? Which I shouldn't say out loud. I told him that I was chronically ill on our first date because I had to, because we were talking about volleyball, and sometimes it just like naturally comes up, and I feel like that's okay when it like naturally comes up. But I did think I like had to preface this like with him. A lot of times what I do is I'm like, they'll ask like, oh, why'd you stop playing volleyball? And I'll say like, oh, it's like a really long story, but I end up having to like medically retire. And they're like, oh, okay. And usually they're like so incompetent that they don't like follow up, you know? But he followed up. And even when you say medically retired, most people think like, oh, you tore your ACL, not like you actually got thrown into autonomic dysfunction and your body doesn't work anymore. So, but I also think it's like really hard for like men to think about like a future. Like when I've like talked about this with him, which is like crazy. I shouldn't be talking about this. Like I haven't known him that long, but I have met his parents. Anyways, that it's like thinking about my future and stuff, it's like I want children. This is like crazy to be talking about on the internet, but it's like I want children, but at the same time, like I wouldn't want my child to like go through what I'm going through. So it's like, then do I like not have my own biological children? Because it's like I don't want to be the cause of like somebody living how I'm living, you know? But at the same time, like my whole life, like I've wanted to be a mother, you know, stuff like that. That it's just like when you think about your future and things like that, it's just like really complicated when you're chronically ill, and even more complicated when you have a man in the picture. Anyways, so far this man has been like very accepting of me being ill. You know, I think again, they don't totally understand it. You know, he knows that I do a lot of medication and infusions and things like that. But again, I think I'm just like really good at hiding my ailments. And I'm also good at like picking things that aren't gonna like push me over the edge, you know, like we do a lot of like movies and like going to the park with my dog, like we painted pumpkins, stuff like that, that it's seated and not crazy, stuff like that. So if you're out in the world dating, I feel you, because it's rough, all right? It's rough out there. But I give you props, okay? Because you are not a burden with your chronic illness. You are an absolute baddie, actually. And I suggest finding accessible dates that you can go on. If a man is not currently serving you, get rid of him. There are plenty more out there. I really feel like it's like very easy to like lose yourself in a man, and you get so excited about like the new relationship and the new things, but it's like so important that it's like actually a man just like complements your life. And if he's like taking over, or if a woman is taking over, this again is like literally any relationship ever. Like if you are not in a balanced, healthy relationship, do not be in it, you know? I say this all the time, but it is so much better for me to be alone and happy than for me to be in a relationship or a friendship that is not serving me. So think about that. Like, are there relationships and things in your life that are not serving you or not bringing you joy? Because if that is the case, why is it in your life? Again, living with a chronic illness is hard enough. Why are you bringing in toxic relationships? You know? And I also think, I've talked about like losing friendships and losing people throughout this like whole episode, that it's like I think you get really good at being alone and finding joy in being alone. I have my best friend right next to me, my doggy, and we live it up in my apartment every day. We crochet, we listen to music, we find things that we can do ourselves that bring us joy. You should not have to rely on another person to bring you happiness or serve you in any way. You never know what's going to happen in life and who's going to be there for you and who's not going to be there for you. So you should really get used to being there for yourself. Wow, that was like so insightful. I think this episode is long enough. I really wanted to give you all of my crazy men stories because man, do I have a few of like literally how idiotic and dumb men are. But I think I should save that because maybe I'll do that later, or maybe I shouldn't put that on the internet. you know? So thank you for listening to another episode of I Don't Know What This Podcast is called. See you all next week. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Love ya.